Yep, today's Saturday, November 8th, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just came back from Lowe's. Look, I got, you only can see three. Look, I got four. I got four 4x4 by 16s. I got a couple 2x8 by 12s. A couple more. I got a couple more 2x4 by 8. I mean, yeah, 2x4 by 8. 2x4, 8 foot long. And that's because look at my dogs. Yeah, they're going up there, but look, and I we're just sitting here. I did a little bit more work today. Hey, up there at the top. And so, yeah, I'm working my way across, but I realized I need to put some horizontal braces, like going from there down to the ground, and going from that thing right there, right here, going down to the ground, because the thing is, I know there's a hurricane coming. Yeah, a hurricane could blow that thing over, all right? But if I put some diagonal supports there, just like they do on telephone poles, except they make them out of wire on telephone poles. But, of course, I want to make my diagonal supports, and I'm getting ready to make my deck going across the top, all right? That's why I got 2x6 by 16 there, because I had those things for another project that I was going to build for my sound studio, but I'm putting that one off for a while. But I just showed it to you real quick because I did get it started enough where I can carry on. Look, way over there. Anyway, it's way over there. Okay, attached to my garage. What? There's the MG I restored for my son, but it broke down now. And so anyway, I got that stuff because my truck, has this problem. I turn the ignition and it don't do anything. I turn it like 50 times. I had it into the Ford shop before, and they replaced the relay, but it's doing it again. And so I just wanted to document a couple of things. Yeah, I had some thoughts, but I want to give that progress report from my own recollection, because today is November 8th. Now it's 5:06. I spent $157 on that wood. But the thing is, that's my progress report for my own record keeping. But as far as my, internal and spiritual life, all right. I've been, it's just been one hell of a time for me for a long time. And I'm always under the cloud of death. Because, man, I've lived long enough to know how short my life is and how much little time I have left. And the catastrophes that could await me. I hope a hurricane don't come and drop one of my trees in my house. Look, man, I got big trees. Look, I'm just gonna show you. But, it's just one. Hey, look. Like, this is more than one tree. Look, I got a big old tree right there where my cross is. Look, that's a big old tree. There's a big old tree. There's my house, man. Look. Those are big old oaks, man. And I had one fall in my backyard. I know a hurricane can blow those things down. Man, and when that thing blow down, it's gonna crush my house. Hurricane can come and it can crush me. But my little now it's not no more. Now it's a 4, 8, 6, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Now it's 20 feet wide and 16 foot of plywood. And since I'm actually updating everything, all right, look, man. Let me show you my chickens. Hello, bird, these little birds. I know, little birds. I know, I'll come in there in a little bit. Well, they gave me one egg a couple days ago. I don't know if they're going to start laying eggs again or not. They kind of quit. But, I can't really wait until I get that thing. Like, I'm getting ready to put some joists across there, for the deck. Like, I'm making a little bit of progress every day on that thing. And then I'm going to put on there a big sign across there, climb every mountain. And I was going to say, like, climb every mountain, descend every valley, and swim every ocean or river or sea, swim every sea. But if I can only fit climb every mountain, all right, that'll be all right, because that will have the like that will have my ethos. Okay, climb every mountain. And that's basically, if I leave anything left for me to say, that's what I want to say, climb every mountain. Because that's the attitude you have to have. And, but I was thinking along the way, about this, I've been seeing a lot of people lately with one-eyed low, And this lady here has one-eyed low. Look. I don't know if you can see her. And I've seen more than one person lately, which is kind of like a synchronicity for me, you know, for like a message, you know. Like, I don't know what it means. You know, one-eyed low. Because I've seen different people, you know, with one eye lower than the other eye, you know, like that. And a lot of other people have both eyes like even, like that, look. And if you look down, see those three here? That's Michael Cohen. And the guy in the middle, that black guy, he's somebody that I've seen on MSNBC. He's a news reporter. And then you got Donald Trump saying, "Make America Great Again." He looks like an old fart. But I swear to God, man, that guy's a goner. I don't know when he's gonna die, man. He's gonna die pretty soon. I swear to God, man. I believe he is. Sometimes he looks like he's been puffed up, like maybe he can make it a few more years. But in my opinion, man, look, if you look at him, look. Look, he looks like it. He looks like he's a goner. And I remember, so I one of my birthdays, I used to live with this guy Foster. Well, I used this guy Fabio. He lived at my house with me in Virginia, and then you know he taught me how to build decks and everything. When I was laid off my job at this joint venture from Siemens and Motorola, and then I started. I just, you know, I did what I could. You know, I always wanted to build. So, you know, I got a job building decks in Virginia, and this guy Jack from the Deck Tech in Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia. I used to build decks for him, and he told me, he said, "Look, I told him I never built before, but you know, I can do it, I'm sure." And he said, "Well, I'm gonna hook you up with this guy named Fabio, and he don't speak any English though, but he's the best one I got, but he don't speak English." So I worked with Fabio, and I couldn't even talk to him, man. Like, he just, you know, he's pointing stuff and everything, and I just wrote everything down as best I could so I could remember it and think over it and everything, and like have a reference, you know, of what, like how he did it and stuff. And it ended up, man, that we became pretty good buddies, and even though we really couldn't talk to each other, we became pretty good buddies, you know, because we compensated and we talked to each other, but it was hard because he couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Portuguese, and I couldn't speak Spanish either. But I mean, a few words maybe. But you know, he was an immigrant. Look, man, he was an illegal immigrant, actually. Like, he came over here, and his wife even, when I was living at my house in Virginia, his wife even, and a girl named Danubia came with his wife, and they got dropped off in the water, and then they had to like, you know, wade over into Texas, and then they get captured, you know, by the well, they Then they had to go to the court. I don't know how they got captured, you know, but everybody gets captured. They come over and then they get captured, like, you know, like not really captured, but like they had to like go to court. Okay, so then what they would do, people like that, you know, come over. Okay, well, they might go to court, you know, to get their paperwork started or something like that, but not everybody did, and they would just live in America undocumented, and so, you know, I met him, and then him, Fabio, and I can't remember her name now. I remember Danubia because, you know, she was teaching me Portuguese, and can't remember his wife's name. No, but and he had a son and everything, but his son was with his family in Brazil, and then he introduced me to Foster. I lived with Foster. He was my roommate then for a long time after I can't remember all the details, but you know, I left my house in Virginia. I came back, and you know how stuff works out, but anyway, I lived with Foster, I don't know, a couple years or something like that, you know, probably a couple years. And we lived in an apartment together. And then he had his son, you know. Foster came over here when he was like 12. And he's a good friend of mine. But then he introduced me to, you know, his, I don't think they were relatives, but, you know, they were friends, and, you know, from Brazil, and Patusha, Cabeza, and their son really liked me, because I used to take him kayaking. I can't remember what his name was though. But they gave me a birthday party one year. And in my video of the MGB, he's in there, because I brought the deer over to him and he cooked it. Like when I was like renovating the MG for my son Isaac, you know. Ronnie shot a deer. That's in the story. He's in there. His picture's in there. He was cutting the deer meat up. And but you know, they were good friends of mine, even though I couldn't really talk with them all that well. But it worked out. And you know, Fabio didn't have a license, an American license, so I used to drive for him, and we made an arrangement, you know, he'd pay me like, we negotiated, like I'd get like 20% of the work of the pay for the work we did together. Yeah, because he was like, he was the best, man. He was the best. Like, he could work, he could outwork like anybody that worked for the deck tech, Fabio. And he was an engineer before he came to America. And he could do all the you know, like the measurements and the structure, like an engineer, you know, like he had that, like he could know, like he did it, you know, he knew how to do it. He taught me. Except I'm not as good as him, of course. He was the best. But I just wanted to document today because just for kind of a recollection of time past. And I've been thinking about time past today because it's like, I don't know. I always feel like the end is near for me. Because in the whole length of things, like if you measure your life out, like say you got like a yard's worth of life, 3 feet, like I'm past I'm like okay, if a yard is like 48 inches, it'll be 4 feet, 12 times 4 feet, 48 inches. That's like a yard. If we have a yard of life, okay, like I'm at least into like 30 inches. Like I might have 18 inches left to go, and then I'm done. And that's what Cabeza and Petusia's son, I can't remember the name right now, but that's why when I said to him something about being a goner, he picked up on that. He could speak English, like he would translate a lot of times, for me, when English was a hard thing and the language was hard, like he could talk English and Portuguese. And his mom could talk pretty good, Petusia, and so Cabeza could talk too. But when they talk, like when they're all over in their groups and stuff, like they'd be always talking like in Portuguese. I couldn't understand. I would stand there with them in a circle or whatever. They'd be all talking in Portuguese. I have no idea what they're saying. I tolerated it though, because Fabio wanted to go over there like every night. I lived with Fabio for a while in his apartment. He lived with me in my house for a while. Then when I came back from Florida for a while, I lived with him in his apartment, and we worked together. Because we worked together a lot in my experience, in construction. And then, if it wasn't for my working with Fabio, I wouldn't even know how to like even build like I know how to build now. And but I was thinking just about stuff in time past. And I was thinking about my grandma and my mom, and how my mom used to sing me Winkin', or she used to read me from the storybook, Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod sailed off in a wooden shoe. And the one, like, I don't know, can't remember, we used to sing it or she read it or whatever, but maybe it both. But to grandmother's house we go, the horse knows the way to carry the sleigh through the white and drifting snow. Over the hills and through the woods, to grandmother's house we go. The horse knows the way to carry the sleigh through the white and drifting snow. I was thinking about my mom and my life in Wisconsin, Chet's Happy Tap. Like my grandma lived in Peshtigo. And me and my cousins, Kyle and Jody, we'd walk, and my brother Scott, we'd walk down like to Chet's Happy Tap and pick up can tops off the road on our walk, And then we'd make a big long chain out of the pop tops, because you could bend them together and everything. And she had a dog named Josh, and she had like these teepees of things, like that, going together. Like I think they were for some kind of garden stuff, And we always thought they were for like Indians and everything. And that's when my Uncle John, told us about how he got attacked by a lion in Africa. And I put that in my poem that I wrote for a poem I wrote, The 4 Men and 5 Standing Tall, or something like that. It was about my uncles and my grandpa. And after my Uncle Buzz died. And, just thinking about jumping on my grandma's bed. And we used to go and see her and my grandpa, and everybody would go to my grandma and grandpa's house on the Peshtigo River. And how my uncles would throw the baseball to each other and catching mitts and everything, And there's one row on one side, one row on the other side, all my uncles and grandpa and everything. And they'd just throw the ball back and forth, Or, fishing for bullheads on the Peshtigo River. And they had electric eels. And that's the river where I remember who else was with me. But we were on the Peshtigo River in my grandpa's old rowboat, and the paddles dropped in the water, and we were heading for the dam. Seriously, a lot of scary stuff. And even my cousin Tina, and she had like a date or a boyfriend or something, and I remember all that stuff. The woodchucks in the wood pile. And I was a little kid, and it was so long ago. And but I remember all that, And then I remember my grandma, when she got sick, cancer, and laying on the bed in the hospital. And her eyes, they put eye drops in her eyes because they wouldn't shut, and they looked like they had scales on them, like a fish. And my grandpa was cold. Like, it seemed like he treated her like just another animal, dying. And he never talked. And that grandpa, he was my step grandpa, Glover. And he never talked much, He would talk to my cousin Jeremy, or my nephew Jeremy, when he was born, a little kid. He'd read him storybooks. That's the only time he ever really talked, that I remember. Except I remember him getting really mad at me and my brother one time, for getting on top of the counter trying to get cereal. And I remember my Uncle Buzz, because he'd go out drinking and he was young, and be sick, and my grandma would take care of him. But there's a lot of memories, but just thinking about One-Eyed Low. And so in those times so long ago, the only thing I can do is reflect upon what life was like back then. My cousin Tracy, she got brain cancer. I remember she had to have brain surgery. My Uncle Mike, and Tracy, and I can't remember what her sister's name was. She was younger. And my Uncle Ron, how they would call my Uncle Ron, because my Uncle Ron never came from Illinois to Wisconsin, on occasions like Thanksgiving, too far away and everything. But they talk on the phone. My Uncle Ron gave my daughter, Amber, and my Uncle Ron and my Aunt Tony gave my daughter, Amber, a good painting set. Because look, some people in my family actually made good, and they made money, and they could do stuff like that. My Uncle Mike, he was an accountant, and he did the books for like major companies. Like he would go over to Japan and stuff like that to do their books, like those oil companies, steel companies, stuff like that. Like, I don't know whatever happened to any of my aunt or uncles now. My Uncle Gene, you know, I reference these guys like in my poem. My Uncle Mike, my Uncle Gene, my Uncle Buzz, my Uncle John. My Uncle John, he taught me math. I couldn't figure out math. I think it was algebra. And he helped me and tutored me. And he had this little car with a stick shift. A little tiny car. And, you know. And I just been reflecting upon my past. And I'm wanting to, I just came back from Lulz, you know, with some wood to support my sign, because like it's approaching hurricane season and a disaster could come my way. But when I get everything up there, you know, I'm gonna say climb every mountain, and if I have room, swim every sea, descend every canyon. And until we meet again. All right.